All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at this really interesting 2025 report on the global market for highly reactive polyisobutylene.
HR-PIB.
Yeah, HR-PIB, exactly. Now, you provided this report, and our goal here is to kind of pull out the most important insights, help you really understand this market, where it is now and where it's going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this report, it does a really deep dive into the current state of the market. And, one of the key things that jumps out is the growth that's projected. So, really getting a good handle on HR-PIB and its dynamics is going to be important.
Okay, so HR-PIB. For those of us who maybe aren't, polymer scientists, can you give us a quick breakdown of what this stuff actually is? I mean, the report mentions it's increasingly used in lubricants and greases. So what's the big deal there?
Sure. Well, HR-PIB, it's got these unique properties that make it, really valuable for improving the performance of lubricants and greases. Like, it helps with engine efficiency, keeps things running smoothly, but its applications actually go way beyond just that.
Okay, so, big picture, what are we talking about here? What's the overall size of this HR-PIB market as of 2025?
So the report puts the global market at USD 1,460 million. What's really interesting is that it's projected to jump up to USD 2,309.51 million by 2033.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty significant jump. What kind of growth rate are we looking at to reach those numbers?
Well, that translates to a compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of 5.90% from 2025 to 2033. So, pretty healthy, sustained growth there.
And, this report doesn't just look at 2025 in isolation, right? It gives us some historical context as well.
Exactly, yeah. So they're using 2024 as the base year, and they've got historical data going back to 2021. Then they've got the estimate for 2025 and the projections all the way to 2033. So, gives you a really solid picture of how this market's evolved and where it's headed.
Okay, so we've got the big picture. Now let's zoom in a little bit. Geographically, who are the major players in this market right now?
Right now, North America is the leader. In 2025, they had over 40% of the global market share, with a market size of USD 540.20 million. And they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 4.4% up to 2033. So, yeah, definitely the dominant force in the market at the moment.
Okay, North America, out in front.
Yeah.
With their huge manufacturing base, that makes sense. But are there any specific countries within North America that are really driving that growth?
Yeah, the U.S. is really the one to watch. Their market size in 2025 was USD 426.22 million, with a projected CAGR of 4.2%. And the report specifically points to the growing demand for advanced automotive sealing solutions as a key driver there.
Interesting. So, a lot of innovation happening in the U.S. automotive sector, seems like. What about Canada and Mexico? How are they doing?
Yeah, they're both contributing to the growth in North America as well. So Canada, their market's estimated at USD 64.82 million in 2025, with a KGR of 5.2%. And a lot of that is probably driven by the expansion of their automotive industry, more manufacturing happening there. Then you've got Mexico, market size of USD 49.16 million and a 4.9% CAGR. So, steady growth there as well, likely linked to their role in those North American supply chains.
Okay, so North America is the current leader. Who's coming in second place in this global market?
That would be Europe, with a little over 30% of the global revenue. Their market size in 2025 was USD 423.4 million, and they're projected to grow at a KGR of 5.0%. So, still a pretty significant chunk of the market.
And within Europe, are there any particular countries that stand out?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you've got the UK with a KGR of 5.8%, market size of USD 71.13 million. And one interesting thing the report highlighted is the increasing use of HR-PIB in tire inner linings. So that's a pretty specific application, but clearly having an impact there. Then there's Germany, always a major industrial player. Their market size is USD 83.83 million, 5.2% CAGR. And a lot of that's driven by the need for waterproof materials. And then you've got France, also a significant player, USD 38.95 million market size and a CAGR of 4.2%. So yeah, lots of interesting things happening in Europe as well.
Now, everyone seems to be really excited about the growth potential in the Asia-Pacific region. So what's the outlook there?
Yeah, Asia-Pacific, or APAC, is definitely where the most dynamic growth is happening. Right now, they've got about 23% of the global market share, with the size of USD 350.40 in 2025. But get this, they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 8.6% all the way to 2033.
Wow, 8.6%. That's a lot higher than what we're seeing in North America and Europe. So who are the key players in APAC that are really driving this growth?
It's really China and India that are leading the charge in APAC. So China, they've got a market size of USDC 147.17 million in 2025 and a pretty strong CAGR of 8.1%. A lot of that is being driven by demand for construction adhesives and sealants. But, what's really remarkable is India. Their growth rate is just phenomenal, 10.5% CAGR, and their market size in 2025 was USD 35.04 million. This really reflects the fact that their economies are industrializing so rapidly.
So it sounds like, over the next decade, we might see a real shift in the global market, with APAC potentially taking the lead. Now, what about the other regions? South America, the Middle East, Africa, what's happening there?
Yeah, so those regions, they might be smaller players right now, but they're still showing some pretty interesting growth. South America, they've got over 5% of the global market share with a size of USD 55.48 million in 2025, and they're growing at a key GR of 6.6%. Within South America, Brazil's one to watch, with a USD 23.75 million market and a 7.2% CAGR.
And what about the Middle East and Africa?
So the Middle East is at about 2% of the global market, with a size of USD 32.12 million in 2025 and a CAGR of 6.2%. And within the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is a big player, USD 20.56 million market, 7.5% CAGR. And then Africa is at about 1% of the global market with a size of USD 32.12 million in 2025 and a CGR of 6.2%. And within Africa, South Africa is leading the way with USD 11.31 million market and a 7.1% CAGR. So, all of these regions, they're showing that they're starting to use more and more HR-PIB as their industries develop.
Okay, so to sum up the regional picture, North America, the established leader, Europe, still a major player, but APAC, that's where the real excitement is, the rapid growth there. Now let's talk about how this market is actually broken down. What are the different ways we can segment the applications of HR-PIB?
Yeah, good question. So the report segments the market by molecular weight, by application, and by end use. So let's start with molecular weight, which basically refers to how long the polymer chains are in the HR-PIB.
Yeah.
And you've got three main categories: low, medium, and high.
Okay, so what makes these different categories unique, and what are they typically used for?
So low molecular weight HR-PIB, that's anything up to 1,000.
Yeah.
It's mainly used as a fuel and lubricant additive. Because it's got a lower molecular weight, it mixes into fuels and oils really easily. And it helps improve fuel efficiency and keep things running smoothly. It also prevents the fuel and oil from degrading. It's also used in some adhesives and sealants where you need good flow and, to spread out well.
Okay, that makes sense. So lighter weight, better for mixing. Now, what about medium molecular weight?
Right. So medium molecular weight, that's from 1,001 to 1,500. And that's really important for making high quality adhesives, sealants, and tackifiers, which basically make things stickier. And because the chains are longer, it's got better, stickiness, and it holds things together really well. And another great thing about it is that it repels water, which is really helpful in a lot of those applications. It's also used in some high-performance lubricants and to, modify other polymers, make them better. And the industries that are really driving demand for this type of HR-PIB are construction, automotive, and packaging.
And lastly, high molecular weight. So that's anything above 1,500. What's that primarily used for?
The text we have from the report doesn't actually go into detail about the specific uses for high molecular weight HR-PIB. It mentions it as a category, but it doesn't really elaborate on the applications, so we'd have to dig a little deeper there.
Okay, fair enough. So let's move on to the application segments.
Yeah.
Beyond just the molecular weight, how is HR-PIB being used in different products and industries?
Right. So as we've already touched on, the biggest application segment is fuel and lubricant additives. And, HR-PIB is really crucial here. It helps keep engines clean and running smoothly. It also improves the viscosity of the oil, which means it lubricates better at different temperatures. And, with the demand for better fuel efficiency and cleaner engines, the segment's only going to keep growing.
Yeah, that sounds like a really fundamental application for HR-PIB. What are some of the other major ways it's being used?
Another big one is hydraulic fluids. So, HR-PIB, it helps these fluids to lubricate better, protect the parts of the hydraulic system from wear and tear, and withstand higher temperatures. This means the fluid lasts longer and the whole system works more efficiently. And this is driving demand in industries like construction, manufacturing, and even aerospace.
Now, the report also lists greases and emulsifiers as an application. Does it say anything specific about what HR-PIB does there?
Unfortunately, the information we have doesn't go into detail about how HR-PIB is used in greases and emulsifiers specifically.
Okay, no problem. Now, we were talking about medium molecular weight, HR-PIB, earlier.
Mhm.
That's the type that's really important for adhesives and sealants, right?
Exactly. So adhesives and sealants are a major application segment for HR-PIB, and it's that medium molecular weight type that's really key. Because it's so sticky and stable, it's ideal for, bonding and sealing things together. And the demand for this is just booming, especially in construction, automotive, and packaging. Think about, the sealants they use to weatherproof buildings or the adhesives that hold car parts together.
Right, right. And the report highlights packaging as a really fast-growing segment. Why is that?
Yeah, packaging is really taking off. HR-PIB is being used in things like food-grade cling film, to keep food fresh longer, and in those pressure-sensitive adhesives they use for labels and seals. And all of this is being driven by, people wanting more sustainable and higher-performing packaging, especially for food and beverages.
Fascinating. So it's being used in everything from keeping our cars running to keeping our food fresh. Now, the report also has an others category for applications. Do you think that could include things like waterproofing for textiles or specialized coatings, given what we've talked about, it's hydrophobic, and earlier you mentioned medical devices?
That's a really interesting thought. Yeah, I mean, based on what we know about HRPAB, it's definitely possible that they're using it for things like waterproof coatings or even treatments for fabrics to make them water repellent. And the fact that they mentioned medical devices means it must have some biocompatibility, so who knows what else they're using it for in that field.
Right, right. So many possibilities. Okay, so we've seen all the different ways HRPLB can be used. Now let's talk about the end-use segments. Which industries are the main consumers of HRPIB?
Well, one of the biggest consumers is the automotive industry. They use a lot of HR-PIB in lubricants, fuel additives, and sealants, all of which help cars run better and last longer. They also use it in adhesives for things like gaskets and weather stripping. And, with the push for more fuel-efficient vehicles and tougher emissions standards, the automotive industry is going to need even more HR-PIB in the future.
And we've already talked about how packaging is a big growth area, so I'm guessing that's a major end-use segment as well.
You got it. The packaging sector is using more and more HR-PIB all the time. It's in those cling films we talked about. And in the adhesives and sealants they use for all sorts of packaging. It helps keep food and drinks fresh and safe, which is super important.
Now, what about the industrial sector? How are they using HRPIB?
Yeah, the industrial sector definitely uses HR-PIB, mainly in lubricants and hydraulic fluids. It helps their machinery run better and last longer. But the report doesn't really give us any specifics about unique applications beyond what we've already talked about.
And there's that others category for end use as well. Any ideas what might be included there? Thinking about some of those market drivers we'll be talking about soon.
Well, given that they specifically mention the use of HR-PIB in medical devices, I wouldn't be surprised if the healthcare or medical device industry is part of that others category. And, if they're starting to use it more in construction beyond just adhesives and sealants, then maybe that industry's in there too. But yeah, without more detail from the report, it's tough to say for sure.
Okay, great. So we've covered how the market is segmented. Now let's shift gears and talk about what's actually driving the growth we're seeing. The report identifies a few key market drivers. What are the major forces behind this expansion?
All right, so there are a few big ones. First of all, you've got the growing consumer demand for sustainable and eco-friendly materials. This is a huge trend, and it's really pushing the use of HR-PIB in packaging, because HR-PIB can be a much more environmentally sound choice compared to some traditional materials.
Yeah, sustainability is such a hot topic these days. What else is driving growth in the HRPIB market?
Well, the report also mentions the growing use of polyisobutylene, and that includes HR-PIB in medical devices. Now, they don't give us any specifics, but this tells us that HR-PIB is playing an increasingly important role in the healthcare industry.
That's really interesting. Medical devices, wow. Okay, what's the third big driver?
The third one is the increasing demand for polyisobutylene in the construction industry. And this is directly related to its use in sealants and adhesives in all sorts of building projects.
So the construction boom is a big factor here.
No.
Okay, so we've got the drivers: sustainability, medical devices, and construction. Now, of course, no market grows without facing some obstacles. What are the main market restraints that could potentially hold back this growth?
Yeah, so the report points to two main restraints. The first one is the fact that the price of petroleum-based feedstocks can be pretty volatile. Because HR-PIB comes from these raw materials, any price swings can really affect the cost and the stability of HR-PIB prices.
Right. Yeah, raw material costs are always a big factor. What's the
Yes.
other restraint?
The second one is a lack of awareness about HR-PIB in some emerging markets. People might not know about its benefits or how to use it, and that can really slow down adoption and growth in those regions.
So even though the overall outlook is good, there are some challenges to overcome. Now, the report also touches on some broader market trends. What are some of the key trends that are shaping the future of HR-PIB?
One of the most important trends is the increasing strictness of environmental regulations around the world. Now, this is actually a good thing for HR-PIB because its properties can help manufacturers meet those stricter standards. So it ties in with that sustainability driver we talked about.
So sometimes regulations can actually drive innovation. What's the other major trend they highlight?
Well, the continuing growth of the construction industry is another major trend. As construction activity keeps booming around the world, the demand for HR-PIB in sealants, adhesives, and other building materials is only going to increase.
Okay, so lots of potential there. Finally, let's talk about the competitive landscape. Who are the big players in the global HR-PIB market, and what are they doing to stay ahead of the game?
Yeah, so the report says the market's pretty competitive, with the major players really focused on innovation and expanding their production to meet the growing demand. And the big names mentioned are companies like BASF, ExxonMobil, and Lubrizol. These are the giants of the chemical industry.
And what are those companies doing specifically to stay competitive?
Well, they're investing heavily in research and development to, produce the highest quality HR-PIB. They're also developing new technologies to make HR-PIB even more reactive and versatile so it can be used in even more applications. They're really trying to tailor their products to the specific needs of different industries like automotive, oil and gas, adhesives, sealants, coatings, you name it.
So they're staying ahead of the curve by innovating and adapting. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the size of the market and the key players to the different applications and the forces driving growth. So let's take a moment to recap some of the key takeaways for you.
Okay, so big picture. The global HR-PIB market is definitely on the rise, driven by strong demand in those traditional areas like lubricants and fuel additives. But, the packaging sector is really taking off too because of that need for sustainable and high-performing materials. And while North America and Europe are still major markets, the Asia-Pacific region, especially China and India, is where the fastest growth is happening. So, things could look very different in the global market in a few years. And the key things driving all this growth, the push for sustainability, the increasing use of HR-PIB in medical devices, and that construction boom. Of course, there are some challenges, like those fluctuating raw material prices and the need to educate people in emerging markets about HR-PIB. But overall, the leading companies are definitely on top of things, innovating and scaling up their production to meet the growing demand.
So, you know, given everything we've discussed, the rapid growth in APAC, the global focus on sustainability, the potential in medical applications, it really makes you wonder what the future holds for HR-PIB. What new applications might we see? What innovations might come along that could disrupt industries or change how people invest? What new areas might adopt HR-PIB in a big way? It feels like we're just at the beginning of this story.
Yeah, I think you're right. HR-PIB is such a versatile material, and with all these global trends we've talked about, it's hard to imagine that we won't see some really exciting developments in the next decade or so. New scientific discoveries and a better understanding of how to use HR-PIB could lead to some truly transformative applications that we can't even envision right now.
That's a great point. Well, there you have it, a deep dive into the global, highly reactive polyisobutylene market as of 2025, based on the report you gave us. We hope this has given you a clear and insightful understanding of this dynamic and evolving market. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.